Hello, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. So, two things I wanted to bring to you that I saw on Sky News, using this as a fair use. One was the London car, I hate to use the word crash because I don't even know whether it was a crash or not, because the footage they showed, the car braked as it went, and I don't know even if it tapped the gates. But the reason I'm showing this bit is because of how the media uses, they can't help themselves. They can see the footage, at the beginning, they haven't seen it like us, they think, oh, it's a terrorist thing like before, and this guy's trying to ram his way into to Parliament, and, but when you actually see the footage, then it's just a car slowly driving in. It actually brakes before it goes onto the pavement, and then maybe it taps the gate at best. It looks like a brake fail. It's 2 days since it's been on, and there's been no, the man's been arrested, but they haven't told us whether what actually happened. Almost like it was a distraction from, because they released the immigration figures. They were the highest ever, 500,000, I believe, and Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak were hiding in question time. So maybe this was a distraction, because the other thing that made me think it was a distraction is the eyewitness that they picked, and maybe because it's close to the Westminster MOD, but he spoke very journalistically, unless he was a journalist, but it just calls him an eyewitness. He spoke, a long, few minutes, without pause, without question, talking about how great the police were and his use of language. So, I don't know, it just seems like, well, the main reason is just how the media, they will use those words like crash and, could it be terrorism, even though there's no terrorist unit. They've been told it's not terrorism. They're allowing people to stand outside. It's not terrorism. They wouldn't be treating it like that if it was. But they keep using the word because they want to keep building that fear. And it's like, well, where do these journalists get off on the idea of the importance of telling the truth when it comes to the news? And do they understand that, because I know it's like when you do the story, journalism and print media, you have to shorten the words and make it succinct and quick and snappy and, breaking news, and you're trying to get, they're taught to do that. But they don't realise by doing that, they're actually distorting the truth. They're creating a fear that isn't there. This is just a man who just drove up. If this happened on a normal street, it wouldn't even be nothing. The person would have just driven away. It is a nothing event, but the way they describe it is like, oh my goodness. So I'm going to play bits of these little clips, including the eyewitness, just to show you how the media uses their words to create fear. And the problem is that creates a mistrust. Why are they doing that? Now, I don't think they're doing it intentionally, but they're doing it because it's part of their job, because they want you to keep you interested. But the problem is that distorts truth. And that's a problem when you're meant to believe what you see on the news. The other one is about Primodos and how they haven't been able to put their case through. So let's play these clips now.
And the vehicles, this happened at 4:20 in the afternoon, but already Whitehall open to vehicles now, and as you can see there, people being allowed pretty close to the gates of Downing Street.
Yeah, well, when you think about some of the planning that's gone on in the last couple of years, you've had the King's coronation, you've had the state funerals. The Met would be very, very up to date with how they would want to proceed in a situation like this. So officers will be well and truly trained, they'll be well and truly briefed, there'll be senior officers at the Strategic Operations Room that are giving instructions and commands very, very quickly to ensure that the safety of those within Downing Street and the wider public is maintained.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. Well, earlier we spoke to Krish Kandia, who was actually in Downing Street when this happened, handing in a petition, or trying to hand in a petition, when the car crashed into the gates. I spoke to him earlier. This is what he had to say.
An almighty smash at the front gate, which was metres away from us, and immediately we saw police scramble, and armed officers responded swiftly, and shouted at the man to get out of the car. This was a silver Toyota. There were
Also, it's not a silver Toyota. This brings into question. First, he talks about an almighty crash. The footage we saw, he was going so slow, it looked like a tap. I don't even know if it even hit the gate. I don't know, maybe it did hit the gate, but I don't think a mighty crash is a truthful description of that. And then he talks about a silver Toyota, where it's actually a silver Kia.
10 officers pointing rifles at the man. He was wrestled out of the car very quickly and put down on the ground and handcuffed, and his vehicle was then searched. We were pushed through security as quickly as possible, and again, brilliant response from the police officers there. They formed a human shield to make sure they were in the way. At this stage, we have no idea what's happening. It could be a terrorist attack, could be a bomb attack, could be an armed man, and so they really put themselves between us and the other people that were delivering the petition. We were delivering a petition about the UK welcoming Sudanese refugees in the same way that we've offered wonderful hospitality to Ukrainians. And we rushed it to the back, as far away from that front gate as we could get, pushed down some stairs to shield us in case anything would explode, and then a few minutes later ushered out the back gate. Lots of apologies that we couldn't deliver our petition, but they were putting everyone's safety first. We waited at the back gate, and pretty soon more police arrived. Some people left Downing Street with a motorcycle accompaniment, and then the whole place became more and more shut down. Everyone responded incredibly calmly and bravely, but it was a smash. I thought there'd been an explosion. I thought there might have been a shot fired, but that was just the loud noise of the impact. And suddenly it's armed officers responding very quickly, very decisively, shouting clear instructions at the man about what to do. He seemed to be a middle-aged man, short stature, and he complied as he was asked to.
Short stature, these are not normal words people use. But what's interesting is how unreliable witnesses it shows you. If you told, if you wanted to create a fake event, a false flag or whatever, this person witnessed it, he was there. And if you then told him, there was a shot fired, he would have believed there was a shot fired. There was no shot fired. It was a slight tap on the gate. But he's talking about explosions and fires and guns. See how your mind works. It shows you that actually witnesses in an event, if they're shown footage, that's not actually from the event they created, they would actually believe that because in their mind they've already thought about it. But let's hear some more use of terms to show you what I was talking about.
It doesn't seem that the security has been ramped up across Westminster, and I think the expectation is that, if anything, things will start to get back to normal quite soon.
Yeah, and as you work in Westminster, spend a lot of time walking around Westminster, Downing Street, Parliament and so forth, and it is interesting that security, for all the obvious reasons, has been substantially increased in recent years.
Oh, certainly, and as we said already, the gates of Downing Street haven't been there for a huge amount of time. 1989, I mean, it is quite a long time, but that was in response to threats from the IRA. Before that, Downing Street was open. There were no big gates in front of it, and people could wander up and down. But of course, we know that Downing Street, Westminster, Parliament is a target, and we've seen those incidents over recent years. At the moment, it doesn't seem like we're putting this crash into the gates of Downing Street into that category, but understandably, there is huge amounts of security here. There are armed police.
They're talking about security, they're making you fearful. Forward a bit.
When you look back on the footage, because it does go very slowly, Yes, it seems to have come from another bit of the estate. I should just say it does seem at the moment like the roads are being opened up again. You can probably hear the police behind me there shouting at everybody to get out of the road now. And it seems like they're about to remove these cordons that were put out when this incident happened and open up this street again, which suggests that the security risk is now over and everything is going to largely go back to normal. Of course, the car is still there, but it does seem like it's been checked over and things are going to start opening up.
So
Liz, thanks very much. It sounds as if the police are certainly reassured about that. Let's speak to Colin Morgan, former head of Public Order Branch at the Metropolitan Police. So, Colin, I mean, what are your thoughts about this? It seems, the car drove certainly quite slowly into the gate. The police acted with restraint, says the eyewitness that came on Sky News a little earlier. What do you make of it all?
Yeah, I think your assessment from your previous reporter was pretty spot on. I mean, I think the police will be keeping their options open. Obviously, could it be mental health? Could it be drunkenness? Could it be anything? But it could simply be our motorist that got confused and realised where that he was. I mean, you used the terminology a little while ago, Mark, that came to rest against the gates. Looking at your Skycopter footage, it's probably as much that as anything is. But I mean, it's a very strange situation, especially as you say, where it came from at Richmond Terrace, directly opposite Whitehall to Downing Street, which is a car park, and a car park close to the Ministry of Defence building. But I think the police will be keeping their options open. I mean, again, looking at your footage, I think the officers that were searching the vehicle, they weren't in white forensic suits. The vehicle wasn't being isolated because they were concerned about it. They were allowing people, they've probably got some sort of cordons in, but they were allowing people to walk further up the street. You could see them up with the Scottish office, etc., further up the street. They weren't pushing them back. So I don't think they had any concerns at any stage about the vehicle. And I know it's been mentioned a couple of times now, but, I don't know many countries in the world where something like this happening, that shots wouldn't have been fired by the officers guarding the sort of seat of the Prime Minister. So all credit to the officers for using their training and assessing the situation and not opening fire. I'm sure they would have opened fire if they felt the need to, but all credit to them very much in the split second that they had to make those decisions, which shows just how good British police firearms officers are.
Yeah, it's a point well made. And I mean, it's very difficult for these police officers, these armed officers, because the expectation, of what they are waiting for is something very serious. And, as you say, it is the home of the Prime Minister, the Chancellor. They are protecting the Prime Minister and Chancellor, and they are expecting and trained to expect something to happen. But in this case, it just seemed to have been dealt with calmly.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. And he seems to have been arrested pretty quickly.
He's trying to wrap it, talk about fear, isn't he? He's trying to say, there could have been a terrorist event. Yeah.
Just saying, I'm thinking that.
Let's just have one more bit, and then we'll go to Primodos.
Keeping their options open, obviously.
Let's go forward a bit. So they know there's nothing. Let's talk to this journalist to see if he can make us afraid.
In this case, mercifully, Colin, it looks as though certainly terrorism not involved. Colin, thanks very much. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. Joe Pike is down there in Westminster. What we can say is it's a beautiful day at Westminster. Joe Pike is there. And Joe, you've got some information, I gather, about the whereabouts of the Prime Minister.
Yeah, we understand now, Mark, that he was within Downing Street at the time this silver Kia drive into the front gates. He'd been due to depart number 10 anyway, but left very soon after. The Times newspaper publishing a video of his armoured motorcade leaving the back gates of Downing Street. If you look around here, Whitehall is now open to traffic both ways. So cars, bicycles coming down the street. Earlier, there were police officers with blue forensic gloves searching through the boot of this silver hatchback car and putting some items into evidence bags. That has now stopped. There are no police officers anywhere close to this silver Kia hatchback, and also the registration plate has been taken off the back of the car. Of course, this is a very highly secure part of town. A huge amount of armed police here 24 hours a day. Mark, it seems like they reacted pretty quickly, but the fact that they are calm, the police are calm, the fact that the cordon was reduced and now the whole of the street has been opened suggests they're pretty confident they know what has happened, even though we do not know quite yet what has. The fact that we also know the incident is being dealt with by the local borough force, by Westminster, not by counter-terrorism police, suggests they don't think this is terror related. We know that one individual was arrested at the scene very soon after on suspicion of criminal damage and of dangerous driving. No reports at this stage of any injuries, but clearly because of the nature of this, because of this location at the heart of power outside the Prime Minister's home, that is why there is so much media interest, so many tourists who've stopped and so many protesters as well. But at this stage, the examination of the car seems to have stopped. The police investigation seems to be continuing. We understand now, Mark, it's being dealt with by the local police, not by counter-terrorism command.
Of Downing Street.
Yeah, okay, Joe, thank you very much. Let's just recap if you're just joining us. As you can see there, there has been an incident at the gates of Downing Street. A car collided with the front gates of Downing Street. No one has been injured and one person has been arrested. The driver of that car has been arrested. Cordons were put in place.
I don't know if I really caught all the bits where it mentioned about you know, all the words they used where they were talking about terrorism. It actually, the bits they showed seemed to be quite mild, but there were bits, but I can't find them. Here's about Primodos now.
Welcome back. Now, the families of people affected by the controversial hormone pregnancy drug Primodos have been refused permission to take their case to court. More than 200 campaigners began the legal action after using the drug between the 1950s and the 1970s, and they claim it caused serious birth defects. Well, I'm joined now by Christine Feltham, as she was born with disabilities that she believes are linked to Primodos. Christine, thank you very much for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. In the end, the reason that you won't get your day in court, that you won't be able to bring this to court, was in a way because of a lack of funding on your side. How do you feel about what happened today?
Very disappointed, but it's not entirely unexpected, unfortunately. As far as we're concerned, this is not the end. It's a knock, but it's not the end of our fight, not by a long shot.
Just tell me a little bit more about yourself, if you don't mind, just about your disability and how you've made sense over your life of your disability.
Thank you. My right arm is missing from just below the elbow. What can I say? It's not easy. It's not easy growing up different. Nobody wants to be different. But, you know, over the years I've made my peace with what things are wrong with me, what issues that I have. That to find out many, many years later that Primodos was responsible and we're still here now, 2023, and there's nothing. There's no one. We don't feel much further forward. I mean, obviously we are in lots of respects, but from a legal perspective, we're still stuck, which is very, very frustrating for all of us.
What was it like growing up, knowing that you had no right arm and not being able to find out why that might have been?
Well, it was something we always told my family and myself, that it was just one of those things. You know, these things happen, and that was an end to it. I'm by nature quite a curious person. I had done, you know, especially with the advent of the internet, done a lot of looking around, and I never found anything. It was thanks to your documentary and the publicity for the first Sky documentary on Primodos that actually led me to become involved and to understand what Primodos had done to me. Not just my arm. It's, you know, there are a lot of other issues that I can now link firmly to Primodos.
It's interesting, and that Sky documentary that you mentioned, of course, with our correspondent Jason Farrell, the judge today ruled that there's insufficient evidence or insufficient new evidence of a causal link between Primodos and birth defects. But the judge also said in the same breath there's nothing to rule it out. I wonder what you make of that.
Well, this is, I guess, the most frustrating part is causal association is incredibly difficult to prove. You know, it's widely accepted that cigarettes or nicotine tobacco products cause cancer. There is no causal association for that. There's a possible association, but not a causal link. So this is where it's very, very complex, and I don't pretend to understand an awful lot of it. I leave that to the lawyers, but from our perspective as members of the group who are trying to fight for justice, it's very frustrating.
And you're not alone, are you? There are scientists who agree with you that there is a link.
Yes. Yeah, we have, there are lots of, there's a scientist in Aberdeen University, Professor Neil Vargson, who's done an awful lot of work looking into the effects of Primodos or the ingredients of Primodos. But obviously we've been beset by problems the whole way through, really. Lockdown caused a huge amount of problems from a scientific perspective as well, because as I understand it, the labs were closed down during lockdown, etc. So we have new evidence. It's taken longer than we anticipated, I think, to get the information out there.
It's interesting because the government in 2020 apologised to your parents, for the use of Primodos and what it did to families, and yet there's been no redress. What sort of redress would you like to see? And what do you think about the fact that they've apologised? Does that suggest they're admitting culpability?
Well, I think, again, it's just sort of one of those things you just sort of roll your eyes and think, well, I don't understand what really is happening, because, you know, Matt Hancock, then the health secretary on national television, apologised to us, and then nothing. We hear nothing, there is no progress, all we've ever had in response to that is legal proceedings are ongoing, we can't comment, which, you know, it just very much feels like a cop-out, to be honest.
Yeah. And Christine, I gather you're a mother yourself now. Has this affected your trust in the healthcare system?
I actually haven't got children, but
I'm sorry.
It does. I mean, no, not at all. But yes, it does. It does make you question everything. It makes you, you know, you come away with a prescription and you're thinking, what's this going to do to me?
Exactly.
Yeah, you take so much on trust. We all do. Even in this day and age, we take on trust what we're given, medications and things. The fact that my mum was given this, it's too much sometimes. Just too much.
Yeah, I can understand. And we really appreciate you taking the time. I know it would have taken courage to come on, so thank you for...
And the main thing about this is that the government, even though they apologised, went on the side of Bayer in the court case rather than the victims to try and get the court case out, because obviously they don't want the NHS and their GPs that gave this away, knowing that it was going to do this.
Body is reviewing its...
As you'll see from this bit.
Hormone pregnancy drug Primodos have been refused permission to take their case to court. More than 200 campaigners began the legal action after using the drug between the 50s and the 70s, claiming it caused serious birth defects. Our home editor Jason Farrell joins us now from central London. A bitter disappointment for campaigners, Jason.
Yeah, I've spoken to some of the families and they are disappointed with this ruling. They had hoped that they would be able to get this to court and argue their case in front of a full hearing, but this has been struck out by Mrs. Justice Yip, I think really on two grounds. One is that she feels that the science hasn't progressed enough to prove their case, and secondly that they don't have the funds to actually take this case to court. She said, "I recognise the profound disappointment my judgment will bring for the claimants. They believe, and will no doubt continue to believe, that HPTs, that's hormone pregnancy tests, were the cause of birth defects and the loss of babies which they have suffered. And no one has been able to confirm definitively that this belief is wrong. The claimants do not believe justice was done in 1982, and they have fought hard to seek justice since. But what she says is since that original claim back in 1982, simply the evidence hasn't moved forward enough for them to have a realistic chance of success in this case. Now, I think it's important to stress it's understandable that Bayer, the manufacturer in this case, would try to defend and pick holes in their case and defend their reputation and defend their shareholders. I think there is more of a grey area over the role of the government here, who've stood alongside the manufacturers against the claimants, because of course 3 years ago they apologised to the claimants for failing them following a review that the government itself ordered by Baroness Cumberledge, which found that there was avoidable harm caused by these drugs, as well as mesh and valproate. And the government was asked to apologise, and they did apologise. Here, Matt Hancock made that apology, and he described it as a scandal. And I think the claimants in this case will say, well, why then is the government using taxpayers' money to fund a legal claim that essentially defends the reputation of a German pharmaceutical company, and stops them, the families that the government apologised to, from having their day in court. And that they will say that that's not a particularly good look for the government. And I think it means that now, from speaking to them, they're not going to go away. They're going to continue to come to the government for compensation, because they feel that the Cumberledge review showed that they were failed by regulators. It stated quite clearly that the drug should have been removed from the market back in 1967, but it stayed on the market for 8 or 9 years longer than that, in which time they feel a lot of babies were damaged. They're not being able to prove that conclusively in court. They won't get the opportunity to do so, but I think they will still come for the government and say to them that they've been told to give compensation, redress to these victims, and actually they've stopped them having their day in court, but now it's time to perhaps assist and help this group of disabled campaigners.
And you wonder why the government would side with the big pharmaceutical company. Why would they do that when they know they're at fault, when they apologise for it? Because that's how it works. Money. They all stick together. We see all this all the time, and yet we still carry on blindly thinking, yeah, everything's fine, let's trust everyone. Take care, Daisy. God bless and peace.